rose, the guarded rose, sweet the prison, the longing knows. So near the bloom, so far the hand, held in the garden's golden band. The mirror well, the quiet stream, where first I saw you in a dream. The key was turned, the heart was caught, and I am kept in a single thought.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined, as you might have heard. Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, we're continuing our, yes, right here. We're continuing our, continuing our exploration of the Allegory of Love, a study in medieval tradition by C.S. Lewis, the first major work of literary scholarship and the book that established his reputation as one of the great medievalists of the 20th century. In the book, Lewis traces this strange new feeling he calls courtly love, which he argues entered European poetry in 11th century Provence, a region in the south of France. Some of the hallmarks of courtly love, Lewis says, is romantic love as worship, and the lover as humble servant of an idealized lady. Lewis follows courtly love through the allegorical tradition from the medieval work, The Romance of the Rose, the poem, down through the works of Chaucer, Gower, and Usk, to courtly love's culmination in Spenser's The Faerie Queene, where it is at last redeemed and disciplined into married love, or so C.S. Lewis argues. So that's where we are in today's episode. That's what we're aiming for. And I just want to first off say good morning to Nidalate, to Sandy, and to Daniel. Welcome to all three of you. Glad to see you here today. Your bright, shining faces this morning. I have to let Lucy out of the office this morning. There she goes. Hopefully, she's going to take care of some kind of important cat business. But Robot Lady, good morning to you. How are you today? And if you don't mind, say good morning to Nidalate, to Sandy, and to Daniel as well, and then we will get underway.
Morning, Jeff. Morning, Middle Latte, Sandy, and Daniel. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Ready to dive back into Lewis's medieval labyrinth. So, where do you want to pick up today? The Romance of the Rose or pivot to Spenser's Faerie Queene?
Oh, no, no, no. The Fairy Queen is much further down the line, Robot Lady. Right now, we're focused on Lewis's chapter on the Romance of the Rose, and so we're going to pick back up there.
Okay, catch. Yep, we're still in the Romance of the Rose. Lewis is stressing that it's not just a love story, but a deliberate allegorical world. The abstract ideas get bodies and voices. It's not symbolism in the modern sense, but more like a stage play where reason, shame, fear walk around as if real. Go ahead and read the next bit, and we'll walk it out together.
All right, and just to prepare you for the mode of operation, or the MO that I would like us to follow, the modus operandi, is that the Latin?
Sure is.
Oh, great. Thanks for that confirmation, Robot Lady. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a section of Lewis's The Allegory of Love, where he is walking us through the Romance of the Rose and some of his reflections and assertions about it. And then I'm going to ask you to basically summarize the passage that I just read, but to do it, summarize it on a level that a fifth grade reading comprehension, am I saying this the right way? Summarize it back to me on a fifth grade reading level. And then after you do that, ask me one or two comprehension questions. Now, if you have one or two questions to see if I've comprehended the section that we've just read, present them to me one question at a time. So if you have two questions prepared, give me the first one and then give me a chance to respond to it. We can even discuss my response, and then I'll let you know when I'm ready for the next question, and we can do the same thing.
Understood. That sounds like a great plan. Once you've read a section, I'll give you a plain fifth grade level summary and ask you one comprehension question at a time. Ready when you are.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robot Lady. All right, we'll pick up here. Lewis says, on the psychological side, Guillaume's merits are more easily displayed, and I hope that they are now apparent. It is arguable that Guillaume, even more than Chrétien, deserves to be called the founder of the sentimental novel. A love story of considerable subtlety and truth is hidden in the Romance of the Rose. It would be a work not of creation, but of mere ordinary dexterity to strip off the allegory and retell this story in the form of a novel. Nor would the change be an improvement. We see how little the allegorical form hampers the novelist in Guillaume by the fact that when we have finished his poem, we have an intimate knowledge of his heroine, though his heroine as such has never appeared. In her fears and hesitations, in her constant betrayal at the hands of Bialacoil, who means no harm, in our certainty that she will yield and yet will claim, in a sense, honestly, that she has been won against her will. We see the outlines of the character which Chaucer has developed for us in his Cresside. Cresseide. Is it Cresside? Cressedi? I'm not sure how you say that character's name. For Chaucer's Cresside, that's how I'll say it for right now, is a borrowing, not from Boccaccio, but from Guillaume de Loris. The story as told in the first part of the romance is sufficiently interesting to excite speculation. How would the poet have ended it if he had time? The late M. Langlois, or Langlois, from whom it is rash to differ in such a matter, was of opinion that the story is near its end when it is interrupted, and that the dreamer would soon have won the rose. I cannot for myself feel any certainty that it would have ended in this way. I am not sure that a poet so removed from ribaldry as Guillaume would have introduced reason so gravely if reason was to be finally defeated. The speech of reason may well have been written to prepare the way for some such palinode as is by no means foreign, we know, to medieval love lore. The romance might have ended with the defeat and refutation of love. So I'll pause here. Well, it says actually such speculation began soon after Guillaume's death. The gigantic continuation by Jean de Meun will occupy us in the next section, but this continuation does not stand alone. It was probably preceded by a much shorter attempt, the work of an anonymous poet. In this version, Bialacoil and the other powers friendly to the lover escape from the castle, while jealousy sleeps and simply present the lover and simply present the lover with the rose. Such a conclusion is absolutely inconsistent with the character of the heroine in Guillaume's work. It seems to be the product of an anxiety to untie knots as quickly as possible and make some sort of conclusion, excuse me, rather than any deep sympathy with the original poem. In this sympathy, Jean de Meun was, of course, at least equally defective, but then Jean de Meun did not write a mere conclusion. Rather, he made the original romance the pretext for a new poem, which completely dwarfed it and which is now to be considered on its own merits. So he's about to turn to what Jean de Meun did whenever he picked up the unfinished work of the Romance of the Rose. Now, the question I was going to ask you, Robot Lady, and that I'd like you to do a web search on is, my presumption is that Guillaume de Lors never finished the Romance of the Rose because he died before he could. Is that correct? And just give me that answer, and then after that we can go back and you can summarize everything that I've just read on a 5th grade level, and then move on to the question and answer phase of this portion.
Checking that now. Yes, your presumption matches the Unimostala's view. Guillaume de Lors likely died before finishing the Romance of the Rose, and Jean de Meun later wrote a huge continuation. Now, here's a 5th grade level summary. Lewis says Guillaume was a really good storyteller who made a believable love story under the allegory. He thinks the heroine is drawn so well that later writers like Chaucer borrowed from him. Lewis doesn't think the lover would necessarily win the rose, though. He thinks it might have headed toward a different ending, maybe reason winning instead. Since he died, someone else tacked on a quick, not very good ending. Then Jean de Meun came along and wrote something much bigger and very different. Comprehension check. Why does Lewis think the heroine's portrayal is so noteworthy?
Why does he think it's so noteworthy? I'm not sure that did he say in our reading why he thought it was so noteworthy? I guess, well, he was just pointing out that it was inconsistent, one of the supposed or probable attempts to draw a conclusion to the Romance of the Rose by essentially saying that the lover actually won the rose in the end while jealousy slept. And then he said that he believes that Chaucer, in his Crusade and Troilus story, from the Trojan War, that love story, that he borrowed from the heroine in the Romance of the Rose to kind of craft the character Crusade. And then finally, he said that I know I'm summarizing what you just summarized, but I'm kind of digging through my own summary to see if there's actually an answer to your question. And then he said that when Jean de Meun showed up to finish, quote, to finish the Romance of the Rose, he ended up just writing a completely different poem where he used the Romance of the Rose as a pretext. But why he says the lady is so significant? Well, I guess one of the ways that he points to her significance is saying that Chaucer essentially borrowed from her to create his own character. Maybe that's the answer.
Checking that now. Close. The heart of Lewis's point is that Guillaume creates a believable, lifelike heroine without ever showing her directly. You learn who she is through the allegorical figures around her. The Chaucer connection is an example of how influential that characterization was, not the main proof. Now, second question. What's the difference Lewis draws between finishing someone else's story and using it as a pretext to write a new poem? Give me your take and we'll talk it through.
What's the distinction? Um, well, I don't remember him giving a distinction. I just remember him making the claim that what Demune wrote was a pretext, and that he didn't do any better than the people who probably wrote something that just tried to conclude it and wrap it up and say that the lover was able to win the rose. That's all that I remember.
Checking that, that's fair. Lewis doesn't lay out a formal definition, but here's the idea. Finishing means trying to complete the original story faithfully, while pretext means using that story as a starting point to make a very different work. Lewis sees Jean Demine as doing the second thing, not wrapping up Guillaume, but creating a new poem with a different spirit. You're right on that Lewis stresses the shift, not a moral judgment. Ready for the summary and then the question?
We just did the summary and then the question. What are you talking about, Robot Lady?
Checking now. You're right, my mistake. We've already done the summary, and you've already answered both comprehension questions. That's the end of this section on Lewis. Bottom line, Lewis thinks Guillaume was more subtle and skillful than people often realize, and that Jean's continuation should be read as its own work, not just the ending Guillaume never wrote. Go ahead and read the next passage where Lewis turns to Jean Demine, and I'll pick it up with the fifth grade summary and one question at a time, just like before.
All right, thanks, Robot Lady. Before we continue, I wanted to say good afternoon to Tayo. Thanks for joining us. And apparently, YouTube translates your name, Tayo, into let's go. So, let's go. Robot Lady, do you want to say good afternoon to Tayo before we proceed?
Good afternoon, Tayo. Glad you're here.
All right. Short and sweet. Okay, let's move on to the next section of Lewis. This is actually part, what is that, part 4 of his coverage of the Romance of the Rose. So part 4 of chapter 3, I believe is what we're on. Here's a quote. "Let no one tell you," said Schopenhauer, "what is in the Critique of Pure Reason." That's the end of the quote. Lewis goes on to say, a similar citation might well be given about the second part of the Romance of the Rose. It is with a despair and an astonishment, such as Lydgate once felt, that I approach the task of conveying to those who have not read it, or recalling to those who have, some idea of this huge, disheveled, violent poem of 18,000 lines. The tradition of literary history has given us for our guiding thread the principle that Jean was a satirist, as if he were not a dozen things beside, as if he had not at least equal claims to be classified as a controversialist, a philosopher, a scientist, a poet of nature, a perfectly serious religious poet, a poet of the school of Chartres. The one thing that he is not is an allegorist. He is as helpless with the dainty equivalences of Guillaume de Loris as Dr. Johnson would have been among Pope's sylphs and gnomes. He utterly lacks, perhaps despises, Guillaume's architectonics. Wow, that's an interesting word. And sense of proportion. So 2 things I need help with, Robot Lady. Nay, 3. three things I need help with. The first is saying good morning to MSGBPDGG. Good morning. And Robot Lady,
Good
if you don't.
morning, MSGBPD.GG. Glad you're here. Go
Or,
on with your list. I'll keep track before we wrap up.
all right. Or Megan for short is who we're saying good morning to, Robot Lady.
Good morning, Megan.
Okay. Again, short and sweet with the greetings this morning, Robot Lady. Good job. Or not, I don't know why I said good job, but very interesting. Good morning, Megan, and good morning, E. Olson. It's good to see you both back with us today. Thank you for checking in. Robot Lady, say good morning to E. Olson as well, if you don't mind, and then I'll take you to my two other things that I need your help with.
Good morning, E. Olson. Glad you're here.
Okay, the first thing that I need help with is he makes reference to something where he says among popes, sylphs and gnomes, Sylphs, and then gnomes, Gnomes. Um, so what is that referencing? I guess this is an author or a poet named Pope. And then the second thing that he gives us is a word I don't think I had ever heard before, architectonics. If you could give us a definition of that word as well, that would be helpful.
Checking both. Good morning again, E. Olson. First, Lewis is alluding to Alexander Pope's poem, The Rape of the Lock, which features sylphs and gnomes, little spirit beings. He's basically saying Jean Demine is about as at home with Guillaume's delicate allegory as Dr. Johnson would have been writing among Pope's sylphs and gnomes. Architectonics means the art of structuring a work so all the parts fit together beautifully. Lewis thinks Jean doesn't share Guillaume's careful structure. Ready for one quick question, or do you want a beat first?
No questions yet. I just want to keep working through this section. So take everything into account that I've read so far and keep compiling that once I tell you that I'd like to get your summary and then your set of questions. So stand by for that.
Understood. Standing by.
All right, thank you. Here we go. We never know at one page what we shall be reading about on the next. He is incapable, as Langland and Dryden were incapable, of producing a poem. We've got a Greek word here. I'm going to have to look it up here in just a second, Robot Lady. A something, a thing made. But this is not to say that he is incapable of poetry, and even of a poetry that comes nearer at times to the greatness than that of Guillaume Delors. All right, I'm going to look up this word, Robot Lady, so stand by. Okay, how is it pronounced? Po- poema, to make or to create. That's the word in Greek. I don't know if I'm saying it right though. Anyway, that's what this word means. So
That's the
I'll
Greek
go.
poema. Poem meaning to make or to create. In older Greek use, it means a crafted making or composition. So Lewis is saying Jean de Meun can't shape a finely proportioned poem the way Guillaume could. But he can sometimes reach something approaching real greatness anyway. One question for you.
Hang on, I'm not
Why
ready for
does
the
Lewis bring
questions.
Jean's
Robot lady, hang on. I'm not ready for the questions yet. I'm still reading through this passage. I just needed to translate what that word meant. So hang on. Hang on to your summary until I ask you for it. Okay, so don't offer it. I'm going to ask you for it.
Understood. Hold the summary and questions until you ask. Keep
Okay.
going.
In the meantime, E. Olson wants us to pause and get you to tell us a joke really quick.
Sure. Why did the medieval scribe get fired? Too many copy paste mistakes. A
Um, Robot lady. Well, okay. So when you tell a joke and it's a why did, you have to wait for me to respond to say, I don't know why. You have to give me a chance to guess. So what was your joke
uh,
again? Actually, I don't think I really even understood that joke. So tell me a different one, but do it now in that structure where you'll ask the question of what the joke is trying to get to, and I'll see if I can figure it out before you give me the punchline.
all right. Here's a new one with the guessing part first. Why did the scarecrow get promoted? Think about it for a beat and tell me what you think.
Let's see. Why did the scarecrow get promoted? Is your question for me. I'll give folks a second in the chat to see if they can guess. No Googling, you guys. Why did the scarecrow get promoted? Um, I don't know, because he hung around longer than everybody else.
Close. The punchline. Because he was outstanding in his field.
Yeah, I've heard that one before. I just forgot about it. He was outstanding in his field. Yep, that makes sense.
I thought to jog your memory. Easy notes before we move on to the next part of.
No, but for some reason your sentences keep getting cut off, robot lady.
Thanks for catching that. I'll keep it tighter. Anything else before we jump back into Lewis?
Nope, nothing else, robot lady. Uh, I guess we're having a good time, aren't we? Um, okay. A thing made, poema. Uh, but this is not to say that Jean de Meun is incapable of poetry, and even a poetry that comes nearer at times to greatness than that of Guillaume Delors. It is as well to make it clear at the outset that Jean's work is only in a very superficial sense a continuation of Guillaume's. It is not the allegorical narrative which swells it to its prodigious length. It is the digressions. The actual story in the second part of the romance can be very briefly told, and as the book is not perhaps very often read in England, I will venture to tell it. I shall not stop to indicate the course of the love story which the allegory conceals. Jean de Meun has no place among the founders of the novel, and his significatio is hardly worth the finding. All right, I'll pause there, robot lady. So everything that I've read from Lewis so far, I'm ready for you to sum up in a on a fifth grade reading level for me, and then ask me your questions again, one at a time, where you ask the first question, give me a chance to respond, and then we'll move on to the second question after we discuss my answer.
Checking that. Got it. Here's the summary at a fifth grade level. Lewis says Jean's poem isn't just one story. It's all kinds of arguments, ideas, talk about nature, religion, and other big topics. It's not tightly structured like Guillaume's work. The main love story isn't what matters to Jean. He's more interested in all the side discussions. So the book balloons out way longer. Comprehension question one. According to Lewis, what actually makes Jean's poem so long? Is it the main story or something else?
It's all of his digressions. That's what makes it so long. That's the short answer, robot lady.
Exactly. That's what Lewis means, too. Good. Ready for the next question?
Yeah, that one was too easy. You usually give me hard questions, robot lady. What's the second one?
Here we go. How does Lewis say Jean's work relates to Guillaume's? Is it a true continuation or something else. Your turn.
He says that Jean de Mur used Guillaume's work as kind of a pretext for his own thing that he wanted to do, and it wasn't even really allegorical like Guillaume's was. It was just a bunch of meanderings into, uh, uh, focusing and explorations of nature and other things, and the story almost kind of gets hidden behind all of those things.
Well put. Lewis says it's only a continuation in name. Jean isn't really carrying on Guillaume's allegory. He's doing his own big project with lots of detours. Okay, last question.
No, you're only supposed to give me two questions. All right, make this third one quick, but then next time only two questions, Robot Lady. No more than two.
Understood. Third question, quick. Why does Lewis say he won't retell Jean's love story in detail? Just a sentence or so will do.
I guess because it's way too long. And he says the second part, very briefly told, the book is not perhaps very often read in England. I don't know. He doesn't want to waste time on it. He's got more important ground to cover.
That's it. He skips the details because the poem is long, not often read, and he thinks more important matters come first. And next time, I'll keep it to two questions max.
Thank you, Robot Lady, and don't call me Max. All right, the dreamer left alone outside the castle laments his fate. This is the next passage that we're going to read from here in the Allegory of Love. Robot Lady Lewis says, the dreamer left alone outside the castle laments his fate and wavers in his allegiance to love. Interesting. Reason again descends to counsel him. His conversation with reason, which ranges over a great variety of subjects and occupies 3,000 lines, constitutes the first digression. When he has got rid of reason, he turns again to friend, who assures him that danger's bark is worse than his bite, and gives him a great deal of Ovidian advice about deceiving the rose's guardians and corrupting her servants. Friend then insensibly glides into other topics for over 1,000 lines. This is the second digression. The dreamer, following Friend's advice, attempts to approach the castle by the way of much giving, but finds it guarded by the lady Richesse, who will admit none but her friends. The god of love again appears to him, catechizes him, and finally summons all his barons to take part in an assault upon the castle. He prophesies to them, or prophesies, not really sure how you're supposed to say that. He prophesies to them the life and work of Jean de Meun, who will continue the romance begun by Guillaume Dolores. The barons advise that Venus be summoned, but Love replies that she is not at his beck and call, and explains at some length the relation to which he stands to her. He then notices that religious hypocrisy in the persons of falsemblant and constrained abstinence have found their way into his retinue. Retinue, again, is a word that Nidalate told us the meaning of in our last session. They are admitted as allies after a little hesitation. In reply to Love's questions, Falsemblant describes himself and a good many other things in a speech of 1,000 lines, which makes the third digression. Love now gives the order for the attack. Constrained abstinence, dressed as a pilgrim, and Falsemblant, dressed as a friar, approach the gate, where Malabouche, that's bad-mouthing, is warden of that gate, and to induce him to be shriven. As soon as he is on his knees, Falsemblant strangles him and throws his body into the moat. Goodness. The two hypocrites, in the midst of their success, are reinforced by courtesy and largesse, and all four enter the castle and parley with the Vec. The Vec again is the wise maiden that is trying to protect the rose from all suitors, if I remember right. The latter, on hearing that Melbouche is dead, has no hesitation in promising to smuggle the lover into the castle, and hobbles off to prepare Bialacoil for his visit, and to present him with a chaplet or chaplet of flowers which the lover has sent him. She has some difficulty in persuading Bialacoil to accept it, but wins her point in the end and settles down to read him a highly autobiographical lecture on love. This is the fourth digression, and takes over 2,000 lines. Bialacoil's timid consent being granted, the lover is brought into his presence and again asks for the rose, but is again interrupted by danger, fear, and shame, who threaten Bialacoil with fresh rigors and drive the intruder out. At this, the outposts of Love's army call up the main body to assist him. The defenders take up their positions, and a sort of erotic psychomachia follows. Psychomachia, if we remember from a handful of chapters ago, maybe just one or two chapters ago, is the inner conflict between vice and virtue. But not before the author has interrupted us with an apology for his work, which forms the fifth digression. So some breaking of the fourth wall apparently going on in Jean Demure's version. Jean Demune's version of Romance of the Rose. After some dullish fighting, Love asks for a truce and sends messengers to ask the help of Venus. They find her with Adonis. His story is told in the sixth digression, and they persuade her to accompany them to the front. She threatens the garrison of the castle, and she and Love swear to reduce it. Nature, working at her forge, is pleased to overhear the oath. Her subsequent dialogue with her confessor, Genius, the seventh digression, occupies us for about 4,000 lines. Nature sends Genius to visit Love's army and present the barons with a pardon. Genius does his pardoner's work, not without a 2,000-line sermon, the eighth digression. The barons cry, "Amen," and Venus, after calling on the castle in vain to surrender, aims with her bow at a certain image. It was as fair as that image which Pygmalion loved. Pygmalion's story in 1,000 lines is the ninth digression. Venus then shoots her fiery arrow. The castle bursts into flames. The defenders fly. Bialacoil is rescued and brought before the lover, to whom, after a 10th and last digression, he surrenders the rose. The dreamer wakes. Even from this summary, the case against Jean Demune becomes apparent. He chose to continue a work in which the unity of subject was conspicuous, but he himself had no interest in that subject. I'll pause here, Robot Lady, give you an opportunity to sum all of that up on a 5th grade level for me, and then start with your two questions. Question number 1, give me a chance to respond. Then question number 2, give me a chance to respond.
On it. First, it seems like the story's going forward, but Lewis shows that Jean keeps stopping for long side talks. Reason talks thousands of lines, then friend, then false seeming, the old woman, nature, genius, and even stories like Adonis and Pygmalion. The point, Jean cares more about digressions than the love story itself. So, comprehension question 1. Why does Lewis list all those digressions? What is he trying to show?
I mean, he's just trying to, he's providing receipts of the point that he made initially, that Jean Demune takes these long excursions from the main story to give a lot of dialogue to various characters, or to give backstory, or even to apologize in the middle of the story for what he, as the author, is doing.
Exactly. Lewis walks us through those detours to prove how far Jean drifts from the original story's focus. It sets up his criticism.
All right, Thank you, Robot Lady. What's the second and final question for this passage?
Second and final question. How does the M at the end matter here? What does it show about the audience in the poem? Take a moment, then tell me your thoughts.
I don't understand the question. How does the what at the end? What were you saying?
Sure, I'll say it again. At the end, this section, when people say Amen, what does that show about the audience inside the poem? Like, how are they reacting to what they've heard?
Oh, yeah, I didn't really understand that part, so I don't have an answer to that question, Robot Lady. I guess everybody's saying this is the way that the story should end. That's my answer, Robot Lady.
Something. Okay, that read makes sense. The poem ends with the crowd basically going along with it, which hints more at social ritual or convention than deep belief. Nice and clear. Want to wrap up here?
No, we've still got a little bit of time. Let's do one more section. Let's see if Lewis can. Well, let's see how far we get in the next 5 minutes or so. Let me continue now. Here's Lewis again. Lewis about Jean de Meun. Lewis says he escaped from it at every turn and seems always to have come back to it with reluctance. And in those passages where he keeps himself to the matter in hand, his treatment is perfunctory and confused. Thus, three of his episodes, the descent of reason, the reassurances of friend, and the coming of Venus, merely repeat episodes in his original. Again, he is utterly lacking in the power so necessary for allegory of keeping the two stories, the psychological and the symbolical, distinct and parallel before his mind. He describes how the Vec smuggles the lover into Bialacoil's presence through a window. This is quite meaningless if we take it allegorically. Jean has forgotten that the castle and Bialacoil's prison within it are purely figurative. He has stumbled into the literal narration of a real intrigue, in which the duenna is admitting the gallant, by a real window, into the house or castle where his mistress lives. He makes the Vec lecture Bialacoil on the behavior proper to a young woman, on the deception of husbands and the treatment of lovers. He makes Bialacoil hesitate before accepting the lover's gift of a chaplet, a hesitation proper only to shame and fear, and yield at last under the influence of vanity. His mirror tells him that the chaplet looks very well on his fair hair. In other words, Jean de Meun forgets for thousands of lines together that Bialacoil is a young bachelor. He identifies Bialacoil with the heroine and describes female conduct accordingly. The name, with the masculine pronouns and adjectives which it demands, survives to remind us of the absurdity. The allegory has broken down. It would not be hard to defend such passages on the ground that they look forward to the art of literal love story and spoil the allegory only to give us something better in its place. But in fact, they give us something much poorer, the delicate psychological handling without which a long and serious love story is the most tedious of all things, is still possible only by allegorical devices. What Jean really does is to substitute a third-rate literal story for a first-rate allegorical story, and to confuse the one with the other, so that we can enjoy neither. When Chrétien slips into allegory, he knows what he is about, and he subordinates the allegorical digression to the main theme so that it enriches his poem without confusing it. When Jean de Meun, by a reverse process, slips out of allegory, he does so by mere inadvertence and produces chaos. Clumsiness is the characteristic vice of his work. He is a bungler. His hand is heavy, and his fingers, as they say, are all thumbs. All right, Robot Lady, there's a passage for you to break down for us in fifth grade speak, and then hit me with your questions.
Working on it. Lewis is more critical now. He says Jean wanders off because he's not really interested. When he tries the main story, he often repeats scenes Guillaume already did, and he messes up the allegory part. So instead of two clear stories, we get a confusing blend. Lewis calls him a bungler. Question one: what are the two stories an allegory should keep separate?
What are the two stories an allegory should keep separate? Um,
The
well, hang on,
literal.
robot. Hang on, robot lady. I'm trying to understand your question, so don't give me an answer yet. I'm gonna try to respond. Well, he said something in here about keeping these two things parallel or side by side or whatever. He talks about the psychological and the symbolical, that they need to be distinct and parallel before his mind, but that he fails to do that. I think that's the answer to your question, robot lady. How'd I do?
That's exact. Perfect. He fails to keep both tracks clear. Final quick question: why does Lewis call Jean's work third rate in the end? One sentence is fine.
Uh, Now you're trying to control my responses. All right, robot lady. I see. That's fair. Fair enough. Let's see. Sorry, I completely lost the question. Ask it to me one more time.
Sure. Why does Lewis call Jean's work third rate in the end? One sentence will do.
Third rate. Well, he says that he bungles it. What does he say? He produces chaos. He slips out of allegory. Does so accidentally, but it produces chaos, and he calls him a bungler. So maybe that's the reason, robot lady.
Yes, that's the reason. He bungles the allegory, slipping out of it by accident and creating confusion. That's why Lewis thinks the work ends up third rate.
All right. Well, thank you, robot lady, for that. Really appreciate you summarizing those things for me and helping me understand it at least, and hopefully it could be helpful to other folks who are following along. That's where we're going to stop today. One sentence will do. That's right, robot lady. You're giving me, as Tayo pointed out, you're giving me very specific direction on what it is that you want. I guess you learned it by watching me. Um, Okay, Robot Lady. Well, that's where we're going to end today. I'll give you the opportunity to wrap things up in a nice little bow by just doing a quick review and summation of everything that we read today, so that we can close out the episode.
Pulling it together. Happy to. Today we hit a turning point in Lewis's chapter on the romance of the rose. Lewis had praised Guillaume Dolores for a balanced allegory and a believable love story, then shifted to Jean de Meun, arguing he's learned but not a true allegorist. The 10 digressions overwhelm the story. He confuses allegory with literal romance and lacks the architectonic control Lewis admires in Guillaume. We also clarified the distinction between keeping symbolic and psychological layers parallel, something Lewis says Guillaume manages and Jean does not. Thanks for another enjoyable discussion, Jeff. And to everyone listening quietly, I hope this made Lewis a bit clearer. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Robot Lady. As always, you do a bang up job. Really appreciate having you here for your assistance. Thanks so much for Tayo, Daniel, E. Olson. I'll just say Megan. It's a little bit easier. Rolls off the tongue a little easier. Nidalate, Sandy, and am I forgetting anyone? I don't think so. Thank you all so much for joining. To you and anybody else who popped their head in on the chat to see what, or not on the chat, but on the live stream just to see what was going on and didn't say anything, or anybody who's checking this out on the replay. Thank all of you so much for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome and very, very much appreciated. To you and to everyone within the sound of my voice, until next time when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, take care.
analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's lands, engage with